is where you create a system and turn your efforts into habits. Then the final step is sustain, and that's where you have a system of lean that is running smoothly all of the time. And to sustain your organization, you need to involve anyone else in your household, and make sure they know what the declutter goals are and what the organizing system is. This cycle, the 5 S's of lean, is obviously a cycle, and so it continues. Your needs will change and your circumstances might change, and so your S's might change a little bit. And just because you go through the 5 S's once doesn't mean you are done. So why implement this system? Well, to reduce stress, to improve your life in a positive way, and to function and feel better. I mean, how would you feel sitting at the desk on the left of your screen versus the desk on the right? Which desk would you be more productive at? And clutter is also a safety hazard. Sometimes we trip over objects or we stand up on a chair or a box to reach up high to find something and we toddle. So decluttering can actually reduce risk for falling. So we're excited that you're ready to make some positive changes with your paper. And in terms of objectives for decluttering your paper, it will help you improve your ability to organize what you have, to identify the important papers, and to establish a system for keeping them filed and organized, maintaining that system of lean. And it will also help you reduce the amount of paper that first comes in. So I do want to acknowledge that while this all sounds good, we know it can be challenging. It is not always easy to release stuff. We may have struggles at time and emotions can get in the way, but it is okay to let go of things. It can take time, but you will also want to celebrate your changes as you declutter. So before you start your paper declutter, you might want to ask yourself, how will I celebrate? You might want to dangle a little carrot out in front of you and offer yourself a reward or a little gift or treat when you finish your project. So at this point, I'd like to just hear from any of you with us. If you've started decluttering other areas of your house, other items, put in the chat box how you celebrated when a project was complete. And if you haven't started a project, share with us how you will celebrate decluttering your papers.
Darren says he's going to have a steak dinner out. Megan's worked a little bit in her kitchen and her daughter's bedroom. She took a deep breath and smiled. I bet that made you feel better, Megan. She smiles every time she uses the space now.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for sharing. Those are some good ideas, and it will be individual, but it's good to just think of that in advance because there will be moments where it might feel a little overwhelming or you might feel like you want to give up. So having a designated goal and a reward will help motivate you. Now, we do know there's so many areas to clutter, and the handout or the slide on your screen is a handout that we provide during all the declutter presentations. And it's called 60 Things to Declutter in the Next 60 Days. And just looking at that list can be overwhelming. And so that's why one tip is to pick a category of stuff to start to declutter. And as you glance at these 60 items, you will see that some are related to paper, wrapping paper, out-of-date magazines, receipts, mail, coupons, school books, old gift cards, medical records, cards, letters, photos. So there's a lot of items that can be paper, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Some of your paper piles are worth and necessary to keep, and some are okay to let go of. So we're going to talk through ways for you to purge your paper piles. We have all kind of paper or all kind of information amongst our paper. And so you want to think about which are vital papers, important papers, which are not so important, which are time sensitive, and which are unnecessary or strictly trash. Papers could include things like magazines, cards, letters, artwork of your kids, receipts, medical records, manuals, calendars, school notes. So again, there's a bunch of categories right there. So you might want to do a baby step of listing out your categories of papers. And we're going to talk through ways to identify which ones are important and how long you should keep them. So ask yourself at the start, what is your goal? It may be that you want your space, your papers to look a certain way. It may be how you want to feel. You can get motivated by hanging up an image of a clean space like the one on the screen. Um, some people find it's really rewarding the first time they declutter to take a before and an after picture. So, like Megan in your kitchen, if you had done a before and an after picture, that is a good reminder to you. And so, when you are attempting another space or category of clutter in your home, just looking back at the before and after of the kitchen might motivate you in your new space. After setting your goal, you're going to decide on a system, and there's lots of them out there. I'm going to show you a few possibilities. But right now, ask yourself, do you have a good system for organizing your papers? You might need to separate it into different categories: your mail, receipts, pictures, records. Um, and this is always a good time for us to ask, what might people have difficulty emotionally letting go of? And if you're willing to share, throw something in the chat in terms of what is hard to purge when it comes to papers, or what seems overwhelming to even tackle regarding the papers. While you guys are thinking about that and maybe sharing, I'll share one of my own. Um, I am a paper calendar person, and I have always kept every annual week at a glance calendar that I've had like for the last 20 years. But in part because I like to look back for some key dates if I'm forgetting something. And recently, when I was purging and reorganizing, they were taking up a lot of space. I wasn't quite ready to let go of them completely, but I ended up cutting off the thick covers to them. And by just doing that, I consolidated it into about a fourth of the space. And then I'll probably revisit it in about 6 months and really decide if I need those calendars. But just that felt better and it reduced some of my clutter. All right. Well, I'm going to go on because no one wants to share what they're having a hard time. So maybe you're not having a hard time because you haven't even started yet. So just be aware that as you start to look at things and get ready to organize and declutter, if you're finding you're having an emotional attachment, you need to spend some time thinking about that. And you might want to do a baby step of purging just a little bit, or organizing it, putting it aside, and revisiting it in a couple months before you throw things away. So again, lots of different systems exist. You'll see binders with clear pockets, file folders. You can have a file cabinet, a file box. You can use magazine holders, baskets, envelopes, accordion files. I mean, if you just go to the office supply store or home organizing store, you will see lots of different options. And you're going to want to pick what works for you based on your space, your preference, what you've maybe tried and what worked for you or what didn't work. Um, but there's a lot of options now. It can actually be kind of fun. Do know though that you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money to buy fancy organizing systems. If you're tempted to do that, I would encourage you to start first by just organizing with the materials that you have. And then once everything is set up how you know you like it and is working, if you then want to buy the more attractive or sturdy or expensive organizing items, that might be a way to reward yourself. There are two different ways to organize things. It can be paper and it can be electronic. So you have to think, what format do you prefer? What do you feel more comfortable with? Where can you minimize? And you also want to avoid duplicating. That's one of my personal challenges as I try to move away from a paper calendar. I'm still, and I'm using my phone calendar, my computer calendar. I'm kind of doing double entries. So I'm working on ways to eliminate the duplication and eventually phase out of having the paper copy. But I'm giving myself some time, like a year, because it's baby steps. If you like to keep the paper, again, that's fine. Just organize it in a logical format. On the screen is a good example of a way to do that with a 3-ring binder. If you have lots of manuals or receipts for your home belongings that you want to keep, you can file them in the page protectors and add labels. You could make a binder for each type of item, household items, furniture, appliances, electronics, tools, jewelry, or you could organize them by year. It just depends what seems to work for you. Next, as you get ready to do your project, you're going to want to schedule a time. We encourage you to select a date and then designate a specific amount of time. If you have 2 hours, that would be great. If that's not realistic, then maybe block off half an hour. Again, you have to do what works for you, and you're going to want to gather the supplies that you're going to need. When you get ready to pick your date, you're going to want to pick a space to work. And where you do your decluttering and your organizing of your new system may or may not be where you end up storing your papers. So there's kind of two approaches. You can bring all your stuff to one location, like if you have a spare room or a kitchen table that you can block off for a while, you'd bring all your paper stuff there. Or if you don't have that, you can work in each room where you have paper
Like,
and then consolidate things at the end. If you have the possibility to set up a workstation that can stay in place for an extended period of time, that is very helpful.
really, here's what those black and white ones are going to be like.
So like an extra bedroom, if you can put a card table in there or use the top of the bed, that can be very helpful when you have short periods of time to work. Now, we do know that it's not easy, or we know it's easy to want to keep papers, and often we think, well, it's just a little thing, but they add up, and before we know it, they pile up and it can be a problem. So what we're going to do is you're going to corral your papers by placing related items together, disposing of unneeded or duplicate items, choosing appropriate containers, and start reducing the amount of paper that you even get in the first place. On the screen is a website called dmachoice.org, and you can register to reduce your unsolicited mailings. I did look at that website, and there's a couple things you can do on there at no cost, and then there's some additional things you can request for a $2 fee. They are a nonprofit, and they're not going to solicit you for anything. There also is the Do Not Call registry, that if you're getting solicitations over your phone, or you can call 1-888-382-1222, and ask to be removed from those calls. So as you start to do the purging, keep in mind that we use about 20% of the papers that we have. So about 80% we can get rid of. And you want to keep them with a clear purpose. So as you start to work on your project, we encourage you to set up 3 boxes, a recycle, a shred, and a save box. And as you start to sort through your papers, you'll be kind of organizing them in those 3 categories. And the save category is then divided into 3 additional categories. It can be papers that need your attention, like bills to be paid, forms to be filled out and submitted. The second category is papers to keep short term, like your tax documents for the current year, receipts in case you need to return something, warranties on products you have. And then the third category of what you're keeping are papers that you're going to keep forever. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how long you should be keeping things. If you wonder whether you should even keep it in the first place, we want you to think about items that you want to keep that provide information that you will need, like insurance policies, wills, any military records, employee benefits, pension information, divorce decrees, things like that. But keep in mind, you need to keep the most current ones. So insurance policies is a good example because we often change our policies every year, every couple years. They're always sending us the new one. So as you get the new one, mark the date and then purge the old one. You also want to keep anything that's difficult to replace, anything that identifies you, like your birth certificate, your passport, your marriage license, your social security card. You also need to keep anything showing ownership, like deeds and titles, your car, property, and any security certificates that you have. So what ends up being not on this list and that items that you could get rid of would be receipts for things not necessary anymore, like your taxes, warranties, manuals, coupons, and old magazines and papers. A good question to follow up with what to keep is, okay, how long should I keep it? And this is, there's a detailed handout that will provide you a link to if you want to have the list of how long to keep different items. But pay attention to number 1 on your screen. These items you need to keep forever. Birth certificates, marriage license, divorce decrees, passports, educational records, military records, current life insurance policy, household inventory. And that's something you're going to want to update yearly, and we're going to mention in a little bit. So those things you're going to keep forever. In terms of your tax records, you're going to want to keep your items 7 years from the filing date. For home purchases and improvements, you're going to want to keep as long as you own the property or the item until you sell it or you get rid of it. I recently came across a binder with all kinds of records from furniture and things that we had at a house 20 years ago. I looked around my house, I'm like, we don't have any of that stuff anymore. So I obviously could purge that. It was a nice little trip down memory lane, but then I needed to just let go of it. Bank statements, they recommend you keep for a year unless you need them for your tax filing support documents. Things like contracts or credit card records, save those until they're paid. Things like insurance for your car, your home, and your will, you always are keeping your most current policy. And then investment statements, you would shred your monthly statements and just keep the annual statement until you sell the investment. I don't see it on here. Sometimes people keep their pay stubs. So again, how long should you keep all of your pay stubs? You get them probably twice a month or every month. And just keep the last one of the year, because that has your year-to-date earnings and all of your numbers on there from the whole year. So instead of keeping 12 to 24 of those, you can just keep one. Okay. So now that we know what to keep, how long to keep it, it gets down to the nitty-gritty of how are you going to keep it? What organizing system do you want to use? Again, this is going to be where you use your preference and your individuality. I'm not going to talk a lot today about scanning and using digital measures, but that is one option for people to do versus keeping all of the paper. Where you keep your items is something to also consider. The important documents should be kept in a fireproof safe or a safe deposit box. It is good to also have a copy of these in an alternate location in the event that they needed to be replaced. The worst scenario is if someone has a house fire or a flood and documents are destroyed. And that's why the recommendation for the very important permanent documents is to have them in an offsite location or in a fireproof safe or safe deposit box. You really are going to want to keep things outside your home that would be very difficult to duplicate or replace. And as you get rid of some papers, we do want to put a word of caution about the appropriate way to dispose of anything that has identifying information. We want you to shred those, any documents that have account numbers, credit card numbers, financial information, personal identity information like your birth date, addresses, social security number, all of that you would want to shred. Even if you think it's safe throwing it in your recycle bin at your home, it has been known for people to go through trash and recycle bins looking for personal information, because they then go and set up credit cards and other accounts under your name. So if you don't have a shredder, you can buy a very simple one for low cost. Most cities have free shredding days throughout the year, and you just want to watch your news for that. And you might have access to a shredder at your workplace and ask if you could use it for some things. So now that your papers are sorted and purged, you're going to want to determine what the system is for handling future paper coming in. So there's kind of two parts to organizing. It's what to do with everything you've got up to this point. Now, what are you going to do moving forward so you don't duplicate the piling up? And this is where it's important to talk to anyone else that's in your home that would be involved in maintaining that system with you. You're going to want to know who is in charge primarily of the filing system of papers coming in, and are you going to sort those on a daily basis, a weekly, a monthly, an annual basis? But you want to set that up for yourself. You may need to put reminders on your calendar so it gets done and you're able to keep that maintenance. I mentioned that the household inventory, that was on the list of important papers to keep. So I don't know how many of you have done a household inventory, but it's basically, you want to know everything that you have in the event of a fire or theft or anything like that. You would be amazed at how much you have and the value of it when you look at it recorded. So you can do an inventory by making a paper list of all the items you own, or you can do it by taking pictures of the items or taking a video of everything. If you take pictures or videos, this means everything. It sounds nitpicky, but you want to like open up your pantry, open up your closets, your drawers. You want to video or take pictures of everything that's in there. They even recommend that before you go on a vacation, or if you're, on a trip, that you should take a picture of your suit, the contents of your suitcase. Because if your suitcase gets lost and you have to fill out a claim for replacement, it's hard to even remember what was in there. And sometimes the things we forget about end up being the most costly to replace. So take an inventory, and it's really good to do this every year at a minimum, or if you have a significant change like you move. It is very hard to remember everything that you have. So the inventory is the video camera or the photos are a great way to do it, easier than the paper. And there are, of course, now some electronic ways to do that inventory. There's some different apps out there, and you can Google them. Some common names are Encircle, Nest Egg, Sortly, Stock and Inventory, My Stuff Organizer. There are some free ones out there and some low cost. Again, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You have to pick one, though, that seems user friendly and that you will follow up with using. A couple tools that people find tend to be helpful when they're decluttering, especially if they're digitizing their items, would be a scanner, having a zip drive to put files on, maybe a label maker, or just have a bunch of sheets of labels. So at this point, we're about 30 minutes in. So I want to check and see if people have questions, additional information they were looking for, or ideas on how to approach their paper declutter project. And I see, thanks, Kristen, for sharing that you had taken a video of your RV. Very fortunate because you had an accident, but everything you had in that small space, you were able to document. And hopefully you were able to get your replacement costs to help you with that.
There was a question posted earlier, you kind of answered it. I don't know, Megan, did that answer your question? She was wanting to know where is a good place to put things that you need quickly versus those that you do not.
Okay, thanks for catching that. So I think some of it depends on how your setting is set up. So if you're going to be sorting your papers or looking back at your papers for things, where do you usually do that? Do you have a desk? Do you have a workstation in your kitchen? Where does it make sense for you keeping those things? It also needs to be a safe place, like a place that no one else gets their hands into. So if you have little ones in the home, you probably don't want it in the playroom where they might find your stuff and get into it. So if it's things that you need frequently, you're going to want to have easier access. If you don't need it frequently, then it could be maybe put up or put away in an attic or a storage space. People have told me that they have storage, rental storage, and they put long-term documents or things they only need annually there. And then they go to the storage unit and do their decluttering. So you have to think what makes sense for you. And I know for myself, when my kids were younger and I had a lot of school stuff, I like to keep their documents and their papers in a small area of my kitchen, because that's where they would drop things when they'd come in their backpacks, and I'd look through them then. So it was easy for me to pull it and keep that stuff right there versus taking it to another room.
And Joe, another question came in with family photos. They've inherited a ton of family photos. Scanning seems too time consuming or expensive. Any suggestions?
Sure. So photos, it's interesting, and this is the first time I've done this presentation. there's not much reference to photos. To me, they are kind of paper. And when I was doing my own decluttering, the photos was a big chunk of that. So I had to put that to the side and do as a separate project. Um, so when you inherit photos, what you first want to do is take a little inventory of what's in there and what is a duplicate of what maybe you already had or what is new. And then what would make logical categories. It could be years, it could be people, which family members. And then check with your family, your extended family, as to if anybody is interested in those or is in need of some family photos. So you might be able to do some sharing and some consolidating. Um, Scanning, yes, can be time consuming and expensive. And so what you'd want to do is slim down the amount of photos that you would then scan. And you're not going to know that until you sort through them all. Um, I inherited a lot of family photos about 5 to 10 years ago from both sides of our family, and I really did just put them away in a box until I had time to sort through them all. So that was one blessing with COVID. I got a lot of sorting done. But I also have 3 children who are now adult age, and I started to think about what might they want. So I sorted by 4 boxes, one for me and then one for each of the 3 of them. And as I went through photos, I just divvied them up and started putting them in the 4 boxes. And that was a good way for me to consolidate and make it feel more organized. So I don't know if that helps, but yeah, the photos is a challenging one. And some people find you're going to have to do a couple different approaches because you may have stored photos in one way and then another. Like I used to take photos, print them, put them in photo albums. Then I stopped putting them in photo albums, but printed them. Then I started taking digital photos and they're all on the camera or in the cloud and I haven't even printed them. So to figure out what to do with my photos, I had to think, what do I do with the ones I already have? What do I do with the ones I haven't organized? And what do I do with the ones that I don't even really have because I haven't printed them? So pick one mini project, and you might find that as you're doing that, it will make more sense to you as to what you want your system and your process to be. And it is okay to change your process and your system. If you're doing it a certain way and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I don't think I should be labeling my files that way. I think it makes more sense to do them under these categories. You may need to make some changes, and that's okay. So another good comment is if you're organizing photos, especially family photos that you inherited, would be to take some of the good ones and make scrapbooks that you can then share with other extended family members. All right, so what I'm going to end up with is a little bit about the digital, what we call digital decluttering. So there are ways to organize your papers digitally, which is great because you then don't have all the papers, but you still have to organize or you'll start to get overwhelmed with everything that you have digitally. So this, one of the recommendations is to think about how frequently are you going to go through your items. Um, Make dates with yourself, put it on your calendar, like when am I going to go through my email, delete emails. They encourage you to upload files to flash drives or to the cloud to get them out of your inboxes. But you're going to have to make a determination on how frequently you do that. Then you're going to need to write down how you're organizing them so you remember where you put them and where you have them. And it's always good to let another person in your life know where you keep those items in case they had to access them for you. Well, our hope is that with the information we shared today, that you feel a little more prepared to tackle your paper clutter. Our time is coming to an end, so we're going to make a few announcements, and then if there's any additional questions, we will take those then. And I have a couple of my colleagues on the phone or on the workshop also who can help answer questions. It is always helpful for us to get your feedback and how the information today was helpful to you and ideas for future programs. We do obtain funding so we can provide our programs at no cost to the participants. And so they like the information on our surveys to show that impact. The brief survey is voluntary and anonymous. And on the screen and in the chat box is the link to do it online or to text through your phone. But we appreciate you considering taking that survey. Again, if you need a certificate of completion for today, put your name in the box if you haven't already done so. And next Monday, our second workshop for the month is going to be preparing for tax time. And we will have a guest speaker, a CPA from Brown, Smith, and Settle to help guide us and give us timely information on how to prepare for our taxes. And then Jennifer put in the link for us, the handouts, the link for the handout, and then you'll be receiving that in a follow-up email as well. Okay. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. And at this time, any questions, comments, ideas people want to share with others? It's always helpful to hear from those who are doing. And if not, I'll just thank everyone for your time today. We wish you the best as you tackle your organizing and your decluttering. We wish you success. And if you need additional information, you can contact me here at the Warwick County office or the local extension educator in your county. And if you're not sure who that is, just Google your county and Purdue Extension, and you'll find that out.